Joseph Tokyo here. I'm at Long Beach, and I'm going to see the Queen Mary, and I'm going inside it. And I heard that it's really haunted, so yeah. So, without further ado, Joseph Tokyo on the Queen Mary. As you can see, that is a lifeboat. Man, they were so big back then. There it is, the Queen Mary. It's now an attraction. Joseph Tokyo here. I'm at Long Beach, and I'm going to see the Queen Mary, and I'm going inside it. And I heard that it's really haunted, so yeah. So, without further ado, Joseph Tokyo on the Queen Mary. As you can see, that is a lifeboat. Man, they were so big back then. There it is, the Queen Mary. It's now an attraction. Well, we're about to enter the Queen Mary. And yes, we were right. It is haunted. Joseph Tokyo here. I'm at Long Beach, and I'm going to see the Queen Mary, and I'm going inside it. And I heard that it's really haunted, so yeah. So, without further ado, Joseph Tokyo on the Queen Mary. As you can see, that is a lifeboat. Man, they were so big back then. There it is, the Queen Mary. It's now an attraction. Well, we're about to enter the Queen Mary. And yes, we were right. It is haunted. Joseph Tokyo here for more of the Haunted Mary. Well,
I think we have to go up.
Also known as the Garden Lounge or the Wicker Lounge because of all the wicker furniture that used to be in here. Since the ship came to Long Beach, it's now held over for smaller private events. In 1989, there's some housekeepers who came in to set up for one such event. They came across a lady in a lovely evening gown that they described as old-fashioned, sitting in a wicker chair in the middle of the dance floor. She wasn't hurting anything. They went about their business. But a few moments later, the boss, the head housekeeper, walked in and asked about the lady in the evening gown. They told her, "We don't know what she wants." The head housekeeper went to find out. She addressed the woman several times, but she didn't speak. She didn't move. Finally, the housekeeper threatened to call security. While she was on the phone, the lady in the evening gown stood up, looked around the room, even smiled, and then both the lady and the wicker chair disappeared. All three women claimed to have seen the same thing. This apparition lasted for almost 10 minutes, which is the longest we have on record. Folks, as we're moving, we are a full group. Try to stay close together. I don't need anybody wandering off.
Center of the main deck.
center of the main deck. Center of the main deck. Making sure that's a superstition. Towards the main deck.
Cheers.
Main deck. Middle of the main deck and stop.
Just come over here. Right here.
I really appreciate you guys didn't tell me wish me luck because I could have risked my life.
One of the most prolific passengers to sail on the Queen Mary was Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II. He sailed on the ship about a dozen times, 4 times during World War II. Whenever he was on board during the war, he had his own private suite, and the rooms around that became his war offices. The now being designated Churchill Suite, M119 on the starboard side, is believed to be the room he stayed in. It is also the most requested hotel room on board. A lot of the guests who stay in there tell us that at random times they will smell cigar smoke. If you don't know anything about Winston Churchill, he was notorious for being a very heavy drinker and smoker. So parapsychologists believe the smell of cigar smoke is Churchill's essence, lingering in the room even 3/4 of a century after he occupied it. That led to a story of a housekeeper following the smell of cigar smoke right up to the door of the Churchill suite. She knocked several times, no answer, finally just keyed herself in. She said she came across a portly gentleman sitting in a chair smoking a cigar. And she informed him, "Sir, there is no smoking allowed on the ship." He dissolved into a portrait above the chair, which just so happens to be of Sir Winston. We're continue down one deck. Watch your step.
This was nice.
I heard about the Warren family. The Conjuring, the Warren family, they're actually real life investigators. Real life paranormal investigators.
As you can probably guess, we are standing in the hotel lobby. The front desk used to be the purser's desk. The purser, kind of like a concierge at a hotel. He was in charge of the maids, the stewards, organizing social activities on board. The port side shop was the bank. The starboard lounge was the doctor's office. Both sides could be used for the first class passengers to board the ship. And here on the starboard side, we've replaced the steel hatches with windows, so you now have a fantastic view of downtown Long Beach. If you happen to be a fan of Dexter or CSI Miami, downtown Miami. There was a mother and daughter exploring the ship. They decided to take a break here in the starboard lounge. They're sitting in the chairs, chatting, nobody else is around. They claimed they could hear a soft melody coming from this original piano. They were not the first or last people to make that claim. A lot of our hotel guests from a late night expedition trying to find an ice machine would wander by and tell us they saw the bench shift on its own, and then they would also hear a soft melody. We don't know who the ghost pianist is, but the music is thought to accompany a ghost that we call the Lady in White. Now, some believe she was a war bride. Right after World War II ended, the Queen Mary became the bride and baby shuttle. She brought all of the American GI sweethearts and their children they conceived overseas from the United Kingdom to the United States. The catch was, the only way these ladies got off the ship and stayed in the States was if their soldier came to claim them. It's believed the Lady in White was a war bride who was never claimed. No one I've ever talked about it seems to think that she died on board, so parapsychologists think that the devastation of being left behind trapped her spirit here. Whatever the reason, wherever this piano goes, and it's had a few different homes throughout the ship, people tell us that they see the Lady in White in a long white gown dancing alone as if she's waiting for a new partner. Folks, if you want to take some photos of the piano, or if you want to check out the starboard lounge, go ahead, then join me on the port side and we'll continue forward.
Okay.
Hey.
I tried to take a picture.
Wow.
This is where it happened.
The elevators are original. The controls have been updated, but other than that, they're original. They're all built exactly the same way. All of the parts are interchangeable. The only reason we have one that occasionally works is because we keep taking parts from all the other original elevators. I think it was 2015, one of my former crewmates, Sabria, was wrapping up her day, wasn't really paying attention. She had her hands filled with paperwork. She ran into the elevator, pressed the button to whatever deck she was going to, the doors closed. The interior doors are very reflective. She said as soon as they shut, she saw the reflection of a lady in a blue dress standing behind her. When she turned around to say, "I'm sorry, I didn't realize there was somebody else in here." There wasn't anybody else in there. She turned back, the doors opened, and she felt a breeze blow out past her. Onward and upward.
Oh, yeah, it's scary.
That's kind of creepy.
It's kind of scary as hell. This is worse than House of Wax. Or better yet, or even worse, The Exorcist. Don't worry, guys. My Tokyo fans, Joseph Tokyo is going to document this. They're going to be hearing more ghost stories about this. Oh, I'm throwing it in my mouth. I'll probably get a drink after this. Shh. There's a ghost story.
Kids, I gotta get through. Guys, can they to one side?
Guys, come over here.
Don't give yourself too much.
Watch out, Ronald.
When I first started working here, a couple of housekeepers told me that ladies' room was haunted by a ship's officer. In this man's defense, when the Queen Mary was in service, those restrooms were the other way around. As far as the officer is concerned, ladies, you just walked into the men's room. But who is the ship's officer? Some believe that this was an incident in 1949. Second Officer William Stark was invited to the staff captain's quarters along with a few other officers of the watch for a pre-dinner drink. Stark just happened to get there first. He asked the steward for some gin. After some searching, the steward presented Stark with a bottle that he found in a footlocker. Stark poured himself a drink, shot it back, and realized immediately it wasn't gin. The other officers arrived. He just kind of laughed it off, saying, "I do believe I've just poisoned myself." He had. That gin bottle contained carbon tetrachloride, an industrial cleaning solution. He would die 3 days later. There's the housekeepers who think he's haunting the ladies' room, but he is far more often reported being seen up in the officers' quarters or simply roaming the decks of the ship. Moving forward. Watch, step over the threshold.
Okay.
Come all the way forward here, folks.
Bless you. Bless you.
You good, David?
Alonzo, you and David are good?
Yeah. Why?
Hi.
Excuse me.
Same time?
My hair's about to blow off my head.
Yeah.
Hold on to it.
I hope so.
Shh. He's gonna tell another ghost story.
Come around to this side, folks. I know the wind is going to take my voice that way.
Yeah.
So.
You're a great guy.
Oh my God.
And a wonderful storyteller.
Guys, come this way.
Come on up.
Sorry.
You're good at it, Linda.
Naturally, I brought you into the bright California sun to tell you the darkest story in the Queen Mary's history. The bow was the site of an horrific accident during World War II. As I mentioned earlier, Queen Mary was the fastest ship in her day. Nothing on the water could keep up with her. When she's bringing the soldiers back and forth across the Atlantic, she was mostly on her own. There would be a small military escort of destroyers and cruisers that see her a few miles out of New York just until she got to full steam. A second military escort would be waiting off the coast of Ireland to bring her safely into Scotland as she was slowing down. For the 5 days in between, she had to rely on her speed and a zigzag cruising pattern. The zigzag was to avoid torpedoes. There was no such thing as missile lock in the 1940s. If you fired a torpedo, it went one way. So to avoid being sunk, the Queen Mary would change direction every couple of minutes. October 2nd, 1942, off the coast of Northern Ireland, there was a collision between the Queen Mary and one of her escorts, the HMS Curaçao. The HMS Curaçao was a 4,000-ton cruiser. The Queen Mary, an 81,000-ton ocean liner. The Curaçao drifted in front of the Queen Mary, and the Queen Mary cut the Curaçao in half. In less than a minute, both halves were engulfed in flames. 5 minutes after that, the Curaçao was lost beneath the Atlantic Ocean. There's nothing anyone on board the Queen Mary could do to help for 2 reasons. First, the captain was under strict orders not to stop until all of his charges arrived safely at their final destination. And at the time, that was about 10,000 soldiers on board. Far too many lives at stake. The other reason is, to come to a complete stop would take this ship 10 miles. There were 101 survivors. They were rescued by other members of the military escort. But we get reports from our engineering crew that late at night, or sometimes even if it's just quiet enough, they can hear the twisting of metal, the rushing of water, or frantic shouting like something has gone horribly wrong. Parapsychologists believe that is the 338 sailors who went down with the Curaçao, reliving the accident over and over again. So the bow is probably the most concentrated area of paranormal energy. Now folks, don't wander too far. This is an excellent photo opportunity. Got a nice view of the harbor. If you want to take a picture with the anti-aircraft gun, go ahead. Give yourselves like 2 minutes, then come back inside here to the fire station.
Okay, cool. All right.
That's the machine gun.
Not its original location, but this is the Queen Mary's fire station in the old CO2 canisters. Fire was a very real concern on the ship of Beautiful Woods. This is also not where it belongs. It should be at the bottom of the ship. There were a lot of safety lessons taken from the Titanic when the Queen Mary was built. First and foremost, they extended the bulkheads, or walls, all the way to the ceiling. They also increased the number of watertight hatches. In Queen Mary's case, she had 38 hydraulic hatches. In the event of a hull breach or a fire, the hydraulic hatches, which were remotely controlled from the wheelhouse, would slam shut with 700 pounds of hydraulic pressure per square inch in less than a minute. Take about 35 seconds for the pressure to build up. An alarm would sound to warn the engineers, and then, depending on the size of the hatch, they would slide shut in 6 to 12 seconds. Working in the machine areas could get monotonous. If it was smooth sailing, meaning no real issues to tend to, the engineers pretty much just stood around waiting for their shift to end. So during fire drills, they invented a game called Chicken. Once they heard the alarm, they would start jumping from one side to the other to see how many times they could make it through before the hatch slammed shut. 1966, a very foggy day in July, just as a precaution, the captain ordered all the hatches closed. Up in the wheelhouse, they watched all of the little indicator lights come on, except for one. The engineers made their way down into the aft engine room and found an 18-year-old fireman crushed in hatch 13. They got him out, took him to the infirmary. He was pronounced dead shortly thereafter. We now get reports that people will see a young man in coveralls who simply fades from view. A few reports of disembodied whistling, And women will complain that they felt somebody pull their hair. Now, there's a theory why the engineer will specifically target women. In the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, probably even in the 70s, women were not allowed in machine areas on the ship. You did not go into the engine room. You definitely didn't go in the boiler rooms. So the engineer could be pulling your hair to say, hey, you don't belong here. Nobody knows for sure how he got caught in the hatch, because he was down there by himself. There are those who insist he was playing chicken, but there are others who think he was coming back for a tool that he had dropped and he misjudged the timing of the door. Because we also get reports of people hearing him whisper, have you seen my wrench? Folks, if you want to take a photo of the hatch, you want to pose with the hatch, go right ahead, then come back inside to the stairs.
Okay.
You said that was the hatch, that wasn't like the real one.
No, but that one, it's on the way. Two, you can actually understand how it functions because it's still built correctly. The actual hatch, the hatchway, has been modified.
Oh.
So, I used to, when we would do the nighttime tours, paranormal ship walk, you have plenty of time to get back there because it's 2 hours long. But I would tell the story, and inevitably, someone would walk up to me and was like, I don't get how it closes.
That's not what it's supposed to be.
Right.
Come on in, guys. Come on in.
Don't be shy.
Let everybody in. Remember, people have to get into.
How many stairs are on this ship, though?
A lot.
I don't think I'm
Sure.
I don't think I want to count.
Now, the Queen Mary did not have a steerage class. Nobody was sleeping in the boiler rooms or with the luggage or anything silly like that. There's only first, cabin, and tourist class. The way Cunard ships were broken up was not by deck, it was by the smoothness of the ride. First class was the center of the ship because that was the smoothest ride. Cabin class was the stern, the back of the ship. They had to deal with engine vibrations. Tourist class was the bow, the forward end, by far the roughest ride, as the Queen Mary bounced across the waves. So the tourist class staircase had two major design flaws. It is at a really high angle and it is facing towards the bow. That became a problem when the Queen Mary hit rough water and started to climb a large wave, because then the angle of the stairs goes from 45 to 90 degrees. There are a number of documented cases of tourist class passengers being tossed off of this staircase. One really vague report in 1954 simply says, gentleman found collapsed on forward stairs. So we don't know for sure what happened, but it's not at all unreasonable to suspect he may have been thrown against that wall and died from his injuries. We now have the Man in Black. And I don't mean Johnny Cash is on the ship. My understanding is that this is a shadowy figure. It looks like a gentleman in a dark suit that will ascend the stairs, turn the corner, and disappear. Careful down the deadly staircase. Now, if you have ever watched any of the Ghost Hunter type shows that have featured the Queen Mary, you may have already heard about room B340, which is supposed to be the most haunted room on the ship. We're going to pass it in just a moment. It is the very first room on the port side of B-deck. First ghost story about that room came from the 1960s. Passenger woke up in the middle of the night. She claimed that she felt someone repeatedly pulling the sheets off of her. At first, she thought the sheets had just fallen off, so she pulled them back up. They got pulled back down. She pulled them back up, they got pulled back down. A full-on tug-of-war ensued. Before she remembered, she was in the room by herself. She looked up, she saw the silhouette of a man standing at the foot of her bed. She screamed, the man disappeared. Her scream got the full attention of the night steward, who ran up the hall into her room. Once she calmed down enough to explain what had happened, the steward explained when he passed her room, he didn't see anybody go in, and he didn't pass anybody in the hall on his way back. Jump forward to the 1980s. The whole space was a standard hotel room. A housekeeper went in to change the linens. She stepped out to get some towels from the bathroom. When she went back in, she found the sheets on the bed that she had just made in a pile in the middle of the floor. Now, all the activity in B340 was attributed to a death reported in 1949. The staff captain was making his rounds after everyone had disembarked, and he discovered the passenger had passed away in his bed. Cause of death, unknown. Whoever this gentleman was, we just call him Walter, he's the ghost that's believed to haunt B340. The room was discontinued for renting because of the constant complaints from hotel guests. They wake up to see the lights in the bathroom turning on and off by themselves. Guests would leave the room, come back, all the water fixtures would be running. Or they would hear a knock at the door, open it, and of course, there's no way there. So finally, the hotel said, enough, and they shut it down. There was talk for years afterwards of restoring B340 and renting it out as the haunted room. So in 2018, it became a mini suite. You had to sign a waiver first and went for about $1,000 a night. Our first non-promotional guests kept calling the front desk to say, okay, we get it. You can turn off the special effects now. We just want to go to sleep. The attendant had to keep telling these people there are no special effects. We just remodeled the room. They left abruptly at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm guessing they had a good time. Folks, I will point out to those of you closest to me, you feel free to take a look through the window. I'm going to wait for you halfway down the hall.
Okay.
Watch your head.
Yeah, definitely me. I'm watching my hand. Sorry.
It's okay. B340.
Jump for it, is he?
Sure.
Yeah.
See the light flickering in there?
I prefer to lead the way. I'm gonna merge these videos together. Yeah, I got an app that can let me do it.
There's a light flickering in there. What was that?
That's the ghost making sure you're paying attention.
Shut up.
It's true.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
The ghost needs to know we're paying attention.
That's right.
This kind of reminds me of House on Haunted Hill. Of course, Valerie.
This is creepy.
I'd like to direct your attention to the Bakelite handrails. Bakelite being one of the earliest forms of plastic. When the Queen Mary was first being built, the arrogance of man won out. They decided they had made the ship so big she would have no trouble with the waves of the Atlantic Ocean, and initially she was built without handrails. At the end of their first Atlantic storm in October of 1936, there were a dozen ambulances waiting in New York to pick up the severely injured passengers. After that, they installed 10 miles of brand new Bakelite handrails. When the ship did inevitably pitch and roll, just hold on for dear life. I told you that story to tell you this story. In 2004, there was a family exploring the ship, but they couldn't shake the feeling that somebody was following them, even though they were the only people in the hall at the time. Right here, they stopped moving. To feel it out, was there really a presence nearby? A moment later, the grandmother stumbled back against the wall, completely out of breath and white as a ghost, no pun intended. She said she saw a woman float by her and disappear through the opposite wall. Now, those two stories are not necessarily related, because plot twist, you don't have to die someplace to haunt it. Parapsychologists believe that instead of ascending to a higher plane of existence, some spirits may choose to return to an area where they had some of their fondest memories. The woman who disappeared through the wall may not have been a casualty of the storm, but rather a happy ghost returning to her old stateroom. Onward and downward.
yours, bro.
Last time, watch your step.
Yep, we're going downstairs, cuz. Let's get one of these.
Again.
Thanks.
This was the old towel dispensary. A steward would stand behind this desk and hand you a towel as you head into the swimming pool. We now use it to display a very nice photograph of the pool. It was taken before the maiden voyage to the Queen Mary speed trials. The ceiling, faux mother of pearl with a quartz inlay. She's a ship which is always floating on the water. I've been told those two things are conductors for the paranormal. So below the towel dispensary in the old changing rooms, parapsychologists believe that the quartz and the water formed a vortex, a whirlpool of energy that allows the spirits to travel from the other side back into the land of the living. They credit that with why there's so much paranormal activity on board. This was the original entrance to the first class swimming pool. We have not been able to use it as a pool since the ship came to Long Beach. California State Code dictates that pools cannot be deeper than 3.5 feet at the shallow end. The first and cabin class pools are both 6 feet at the shallow end. So the cabin class pool was removed and turned into the Royal Theater. The first class pool became a centerpiece for all of our ghost related material. So when you peek in, it's not water in the pool, it's a ripple projector intended to make it look creepy. The first class pool ended up doubling as the tourist class pool from the late 1950s until the end of the Queen Mary's run. For the longest time, tourist class passengers didn't have anywhere to swim. So after years of complaints, the Cunard Line decided to make a concession. While the first class passengers were at tea, they allowed the tourist class passengers to use the first class pool. The moment they were done, the pool was drained, cleaned, and refilled for the first class passengers. The 24,000 gallon capacity could be drained or filled in about 25 minutes. It was salt water pumped in from the North Atlantic, which you would think would be freezing, but you have to consider the location of the pool. It's sitting directly above the boiler rooms. The boiler rooms could get up to 115 degrees, which made the water very pleasant. Probably our most infamous spirit is believed to haunt the first class pool. A little girl that everyone refers to as Jackie. Somewhere around 7 years old, she is always described as a little girl in a sailor dress with blonde hair that a lot of people think was a cabin class passenger who drowned in the cabin class pool. The thinking there is when that pool was converted to the theater, she upgraded herself to the first class pool. Little hiccup with that theory. We have no record of anyone ever drowning on the ship. If it did happen, it would have had to have happened immediately after World War II during the Bride and Baby shuttle because for some reason those records were sealed, which means we have no official account of what took place during those crossings. Another theory is that Jackie is one of our happy spirits. Maybe this is where she learned how to swim, or it was her favorite childhood vacation. She has chosen the pool as her new home. She's definitely a conscious haunting, not a residual haunting, and I'm basing that on all the interactions she had with our guests. People tell us they saw Jackie popping her head around the columns, up over the railings, kind of like she's playing peekaboo or hide and seek. We had a few reports of little wet footprints coming out of the pool walking along the deck. Some of the guests told me they thought they felt a cold little hand take hold of theirs. But the most consistent and frequent report that we get anywhere on the ship is the sound of a little girl singing nursery rhymes in this area. She is a very playful spirit. Not sure if you noticed the gigantic dome at the back of our property, but that was built specifically to house the Spruce Goose, Howard Hughes' big wooden plane. That left in 1993. It was taken to an Air and Space Museum in Oregon, so for a very long time, it was a gigantic empty dome that occasionally got used as a soundstage. Batman and Robin with George Clooney, I was told that was the Bat Cave. Pirates of the Caribbean with Johnny Depp, every time they went to Tortuga, that was Tortuga. Now, Carnival Cruise Lines has taken it over for their check-in. But right before the Spruce Goose left, we had a report from a security guard. He said he was doing his midnight rounds. He entered the hangar and he saw a little girl in a sailor dress walking along the wing. We yelled up to her, "Kid, what are you doing?" She jumped off the wing and vanished. So Jackie is not only our most popular, but apparently our most powerful spirit. She is the only one who has been spotted off the ship. We would still get fairly regular reports from hotel guests and crew. They've had paranormal experiences on board. In fact, before we got shut down, I don't think a month went by where I didn't have a hotel guest tell me there were shadow people in the room, or they woke up to the doors and dresser drawers opening and closing by themselves. Our Lady in White has been spotted in a couple different first-class areas. Some people believe they've seen her dancing in the Queen's salon. I had 2 guests tell me they had a drink with her in the observation bar. I don't know how many drinks they had before she joined them, but that's what they claim. Believe it or not, folks, I'm not here to convince you that the ship is haunted. I would much rather let people go exploring and then tell me if you think this ship is haunted. We're on our deck. If you want to get back up to Promenade Deck, where the restaurants, the bar, the gift shops, and the tour center are located, you can walk up the first-class stairs, 4 decks, take the outside tower elevator up to 4, or if you're feeling adventurous, take the ship's 90-year-old elevator, P for Promenade. To get to the engine room, the Churchill exhibit, and the propeller, you're going to walk outside, cross that big bridge to your left, we board at the bottom. Need directions any place specific, you have questions, hang out, we can chat for a minute. But other than that, if you enjoyed our time together, I'm Miss Bill. If you hated this tour, I'm Rod Serling. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Bill.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.